By, for, and with the power in the name of the Lord Christ Jesus. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall continue to follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of what I am, one with the most super intelligent power, force, and source of love and creation forever. What's happening? Benton here, rolling out of the rest area, hitting the road. What do we got here? 411 miles to the delivery. Got the call yesterday from the owner of the company. My dispatcher is no longer with the company. I'm 2 for 2. 2 for 2, taking out Euro trash. Taking out the Euro trash. I'm 2 for 2. Two different companies, two Eastern European bullshit artists, dispatchers. Took them both out. Got them. Now, certainly not my intention, but yeah. And I would never, delight in somebody's, suffering or losing their job. And maybe quit. I have no idea. That's as likely as he was fired, I would say. Especially if he had the level of experience he claimed to have and lives in the States. I believe my original Eurotrash dispatcher lived in Europe. So he was working for peanuts. So this fellow may be in a little different. He was certainly under a lot of pressure, this one. Vitali. I guess he's Lithuanian, I suppose. I don't know. The cranky old man energy is strong this morning. So the Royal We will be fighting through that. And already experiencing some physiological signs of improper identification. And perhaps performed an exorcism shortly before the stream began. Perhaps, hard to say, but there was some strong coughing. Something got healed and cleared, whatever that may have been. But began to feel the demonic oppression. And here's the thing about these rest areas, man. Second night in a row at a rest area, I think I'm going to have to take my ass back to the truck stop. Seems like I'm more likely to have weirdo, bizarre sexual dreams at the rest area. Although that can happen at the truck stop as well. But then you get into spiritually attacked in the sleep is certainly a thing at times. And, an uptick yesterday in strange, most likely homosexual cruising. Some weird. I had an experience actually the night before last when I parked at the rest area for the night. As soon as I got out of my truck, there was some weirdo in a 4-wheeler just like pulled up right behind me. I'm just looking at the dude like, there's all these trucks. Why the fuck are you behind mine? That has to mean something. Like, yeah, live and let live, but there's however many spots for trucks. How did he end up? And this was not a This is one that had the cars and the trucks are in completely separate areas. So there's no other cars over there. It was all big rigs. Yeah, we definitely began to feel this yesterday, a blocking of the throat chakra. The something's going on, man. Get shed of it. Already coughed up something. We'll cough up some more by the end of this, I reckon. So maybe a little more heavy on the Christ preaching on this one, perhaps. But we'll sip the old coffee here and sort of ease into it. Bear with me if you would. So yeah, the company owner called me to encourage me to make sure to start out early in the morning. And I hate to cut the guy off, but I can already tell he's used to dealing with so many different truckers because, I'm sure he has a hardcore group that stay with for years, but then they retire. They're all retiring, like this husband-wife team that I met because they came and bailed me out when I wasn't able to back into the dock at this ridiculously small receiver. Because I ain't no expert backer, and I ain't gonna be expected to perform like one. Yeah, I'll do the wiggle for 45 minutes, and then at that point we're in danger of needing a clutch replacement if we continue. So that's several thousands of dollars to replace a clutch on one of these. Because yeah, they're automatics, but they still got clutches. It's an automated manual. Either way. He said, yeah, we're retiring in 2 years, something about investments. That's what that red Viking trucker did. He met him a woman who had gotten a CDL and was working for Prime Inc., one of the starter companies. And so the company that red Viking trucker was with let him train her. She was waiting around at Prime for a trainer. Then they ended up getting married. And within like probably 2 to 3 years, they were able to make bank. Husband-wife teams, if they can get along and not kill each other, make a lot of money if they both know how to work. So good on them for that. So yeah, dealing with this constant turnover in trucking, I can tell when I'm sort of being treated formulaically. So he's doing his normal spiel of, hey, this is important, so make sure you don't sleep in. And I just cut him off. I was like, in fact, we were just talking at the same time. I'm not a big fan of this idea of talking over somebody. Oh, you're talking over me. It's like, no, we're talking at the same time, sir. I'm doing to you what you're doing to me, but whatever. And he didn't say talking over me. I'm polite. I'm like, I'm sorry for cutting you off, but I said, just so you know, I'm up early no matter what. Now, as a truck driver, there's times when that won't be the case if I'm really sleep deprived. But, under normal circumstances, I wake up super fucking early. So I just want you to know there's no chance of me. I'll be sitting, waiting, staring at the tablet when it clicks over to 10-hour off duty and I get my hours back. I said, yeah, I waited an hour and a half this morning. So, and I was probably the first one out of the rest area just now, most likely. Now there's trucks on the road, but most of these are the up all nighters, or the ones who don't adhere to the hours of service. They're just driving more or less 24 hours a day. That's the thing. Folks aren't aware. But yeah, it's all happening. But yeah, this throat chakra. I could feel it yesterday. I said I could feel something was up with the throat chakra. Blockages. Well, in fact, I know what it is. I said something inappropriate when I parked the truck on the shoulder and ran over to give a guy a $20 bill because he was fine and fine. Should have slipped it out of my pocket, and I had to rush back into the road. Nobody ran over it, but in my unthinking, I just commented offhandedly as I ran away, something about I better not drop my phone in the highway. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, don't do that." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's the key to everything, unfortunately." And then I realized my mistake in that moment. I said, "Oh, it's not the right figure of speech." And I tried to add on an addendum, but by then it was too late. Again, treating blessing as if it were a curse, right? Or treating blessing as if it were a curse. Cursing blessing. So the royal we will figure out how to atone for that one and unblock the throat chakra. Probably it will happen on this stream, I would imagine. But it's not the key to everything. It's the key to everything if one is defining themselves in relation to this vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions in a world of death and a game of lies. The phone's dead. The phone is as dead as anything else. So to treat it as if it has a substance or a value certainly is a violation. Same thing with the money. To treat it like it has a value or a substance. Meanwhile, I was giving him money. So I don't know if that's the proper way to bless another, because he said, "God bless you." And I'm like, already, but and I'll do my own praying and repenting. Pray, probably not the right word, since that's P-R-E-Y phonetically is the same. Do you see all of the tricks and deceptions? Oh, and we got hit with a rock chip yesterday, so now it's now I'll be treated like a moron when I let the company know. But then if I'm expected to just go to the truck stop and get it fixed, that's how I'll be talked to. But then if I do just go to the truck stop and sign in at the desk, there, who knows what confusions will result. I don't fucking know. I guess that's what I'll do. Because I'm not doing it at the end of my work shift. I'm not. We're off duty. We're not getting the equipment serviced on our 10-hour break, if at all possible. That's company time type of activities. So yeah, probably just not gonna have to figure out how to repent for. And it's a good, reminder of society and the nature of things and exactly what's happening. These devices and just how the panic mode of because I did drop it in a truck stop parking lot one morning and had to go searching all around and realizing that I basically can't do my job without this phone. So really, if I had said, well, it's the key to being a truck driver in 2025, see, that would have been accurate. It was just the careless speech, and already I feel it. The throat chakra starting to open up a tad. Let's see if we can pass here. Haul ass, buddy. Ain't nothing out here but trucks. I wonder if more of these foreigners are just trying to drive at night to avoid La Migra or whatever. Immigration. I don't know. No, I'm losing them with the demonology. Don't y'all know Benton's a demonologist? Don't y'all know that? Exorcist, preacher, follower of the teachings of the Lord Christ Jesus. Lord of what? They say Christ is king of what? And I would say if whoever says Christ is king can't answer of what directly, immediately, and accurate. Well, I wouldn't say accurately and specifically. They've proven themselves to be a bozo. Because old Benton here, the royal we, is able to do all of that. Most certainly. But yeah, prayed the demons away this morning. They were trying to prey on me. I guess it's, it's kill or be killed, metaphorically, out here in this spiritual war. And warfare has been increasing, certainly. And my experience of the pandemic was off the fucking chart of spiritual warfare and attack. Maximum spiritual attack during that time. It continues on this dead world. And all this get back to nature talk and this, touch grass and one with nature. Are you crazy? That's as dead as anything else. The flora, the fauna, the grass, the trees, it's as dead as everything else that traces its origins to this dead world. What I am is the way. What I am is the truth. What I am is the life. Not the cell phone. Not the money. Not the job. Reminding myself this job is to live in a truck and to, as much as the food is dead, well, at the level of waking dream, surrealistic, unreality, deja vu all over again, death fuels the dead flesh, right? Certain nutrients, the surreal idea of nutrients and nourishing the body with what? Death? Well, I guess so. But concentrated forms of death, perhaps. But yeah, certain supplements, certain foods, the price of which continues to grow. Just to get decent quality water to drink has become quite expensive because of a market decline in what is passed off as spring water at Walmart these days. Funny how the price of that really hasn't risen too much, but Mountain Valley spring water is, let's see, how much a liter? Whatever 760 is divided by 3, I forget. 2 something a liter. 250, right at 250 a liter. Gotta watch our speed. In Virginia, actually not in Virginia yet. I think we're still in Tennessee, but about to be in Virginia. East Tennessee. To the east, my brother, to the east. And this ain't for everybody, these discourses. So I'm not even going to concern myself with trying to hold or build an audience. I mean, that's as dead as anything else also, right? The idea of an audience. I'm assuming it's going to be a 0 someday. We're at 2 right now, and hey, what a blessing. Shout out to y'all. Although a lot of times when I recognize that there's 2 people listening, one or both will leave, but who knows? Shout out to the replay crew. If I can remember to make the stream public. Still not able to bring myself to pay the exorbitant price for StreamYard. Maybe they'll have a Black Friday deal. US Mobile has a Black Friday deal. Maybe I'll get into that. But yeah, there we go. As far as giving the guy $20, I like to spread it around when I'm making it. When I'm making the money, I like to spread it around. Sent my mama $50 a couple of times so far. Dropped the 50 on old Millennial Steam, one of my favorite channels. He was quite appreciative, or if not, he managed to pretend to be. Either way. Not that I expect such a thing. I like being able to super chat from time to time, or super thanks, or whatever it may be. Boy, howdy, we hit some traffic yesterday. There was a wreck on 40 east of Nashville. That was about 45 minutes and delay. And then Knoxville, that probably kept us from squeezing through Knoxville before rush hour. Knoxville, not because of Knoxville, just because of all the roads that meet up there. It's slow going. Didn't quite make the distance I had planned on, but close enough. And I ran, drove over 10 hours 2 days in a row. That looks good to the company. I think some of their drivers are more of the old school type that try to run their clock out every day. I've never been one of them. I try to maximize my clock. And I'd rather just run on recaps anyway and not take a restart. But because if a person's running out their 11 every day, they're going to have to do a restart pretty much every week. Just truck driving things. Listened to some DBDR this morning, the hat flying channel. Black pill, so-called doomer content. He's talking about pets. That was interesting. And I had some really interesting novel thoughts about the whatever the stream title is. I can't even remember. Sorry, unable to read the comments, but shout out to the chat. I see you down there. And it's pedal to the metal right now. Let's see, let me check the battery. I don't want to overcharge my battery on my main phone. Yeah, I had some thoughts. I started to write them down, and then I organized them in my brain. And I felt like I had it. Then the demonic oppression kicked in, so I commanded the spirits to leave by, for, and with the power in the name of the Lord Christ Jesus. And this is where we see demonic religion and, preachers and all of this really fail, in my opinion, is lack of specificity. It's important to be specific with these, invocations, as it may be. Very important. Yeah, it had something to do with death, and then realizing in the organization of these ideas around death, it seemed to me like some of the demonic oppression tied up in my own physiology. At a certain point, I was, observing my physicality and internal space, as I almost always do. And physiologically, it almost seemed like a panic attack. And, I know there's going to be some adjustment since I'm eating less food. And as I suspected, I seem to be having more energy because presumably the digestion's not working quite as hard. Not as much resources diverted into digestion. Still fatigued also. Suffering with the fatigue. It's possible to have energy and be fatigued simultaneously. Interesting how that works. And then I did a lot of stretching of my shoulder yesterday. So probably stirred up a lot of stagnated, low-level energies that are going to be healed and cleared or are being healed and cleared. And then the morning prayer, I guess I need to find another word than prayer, but whatever that is. And, bringing, via the resurrection of the risen Christ within, bringing forth and facilitating deliverance from wicked spirits, unclean spirits, demonic spirits, in the name of the Lord Christ Jesus. Bringing forth healing in the power in the name of the Lord Christ Jesus, more correctly. The power over the power of these demonic entities. And so I think in some of these ruminations on death, I sort of got a little too far afield, and maybe that dragged me off of properly identifying with the walking of the path that lies within, which of course is always based on true knowledge of self / self-realization, and it's death. It's creation or life itself. It's expanding creation. So probably erroneous name identified with death, because that's to treat blessing as if it were a curse, because that ain't possible. That does quickly become the only so-called unforgivable sin, which is blasphemy in the Holy Spirit. It crosses over into that. Arguably, at least the being, in this case Benton, must consider that possibility. Not even the throat chakra is probably not even closed. We're just most likely, that's the demons trying not to have to get, that's the deeply buried demons hoping to stick around and not get expelled out the throat chakra, right? That's probably what that is. Yeah. So I think I'm going to put the panic attack type feelings up to, it's like light panic attack, very light. Certainly nearing expert levels of breath work. Not an expert at backing this rig, but pretty close to an expert with the breath work. And high level. This is the advanced course, folks. This is the advanced course. Don't forget. Especially in the so-called truth community. So yeah, prone to hyperbole, not actually a panic attack, but probably that's the dealing with and healing and releasing and clearing these, stagnated energies. And it's been many years of healing and clearing and releasing. So it seems to me like whatever's still in there is going to be the most challenging and, difficult to deal with. Although when I embarked on this endeavor many years ago, probably it was just as difficult or more difficult because my own skill level and abilities were less. My own fortitude and my own, strategies for dealing with this, and not as experienced. So it's probably all about the same all the way through, actually. Just the degree of difficulty increases, but the skill level and the power level of the practitioner also increases, seemingly. Although, as noted, what I am is all spiritual power. So it's the source of all spiritual power. It's the animated death warmed over aspect, is that's the being limiting the being through the subversion of the creative force of what I am, which is to create limitation through the yang form, assertion, aggression, dominance. And I learned that from Deepak Chopra by reading one of his books. So this idea of, it's not the person and the personality. I can and will and have learned from all sorts of sources. And never gave a flying fuck about Deepak Chopra. Hell, I read a Joel Osteen book at a certain point, probably learned something from that. I've learned from Scientology, from some of L. Ron Hubbard's writings. And yeah, a few good apples don't unspoil the whole bunch, but it's on me to take what's valuable and leave the rest. That's up to me. Yeah, we're pretty sore in the right upper back shoulder. And I've got a lot of inflammation and probably like rheumatoid arthritis type shit in my right shoulder, like in the socket, because if I ever tore my rotator cuff or whatever, it's healed. I mean, this would have happened a long ass time ago. Now, whether or not it healed properly, who knows? The range of motion is increasing and becoming more normal over time. And now we're getting into being able to move it in ways where there's a lot of popping, lots of new types of popping. So I think mainly probably just working through a bunch of scar tissue. And then you have the biceps tendon, which it fits into a little groove in is that the humerus? Or is that in your leg? I forget. But I know what I'm talking about, but not well enough to explain it. But that can fairly easily, that tendon can come out of that little groove fairly easily. Cause a lot of pain. And bursitis type of things. And again, it's this idea of, this man in the sky, wondrously designing the human body. I mean, yeah, it's, it's not whole, but I mean, there's some clues in there that the body itself its nature is death. It's animated death, death warmed over. I would say just the design of the shoulder joint. Yeah, it's quite wondrous and novel in a way, but it's also very problematic for certain people, myself included. Shoulder joint. Pretty sure I injured it when I started lifting weights as a teenager also. That did not help. Maybe some arm wrestling injuries too. Used to do a lot of arm wrestling. Junior high. Wasn't very good at it. Just I'm more of a competitor when it comes to stuff like that. I like to compete. Oh yeah. Good stuff. Good time. I can manage to get the rig in there. I'm stopping at a Amazon locker not too far from the delivery. And what do we get? 16 pairs of socks, 8 pairs of underwear, boxers, of course, 8 pairs of underwear. I don't know if y'all know the thing about briefs. Dick Gregory educated me on briefs. And I always had a suspicion tidy whities was a bad idea, but I've had tidy whities at times. But like he said, that's to sterilize you. There's a reason why the testicles hang the way they do. Oh man, stretch it out, buddy. Figured. or almost open. Now it's starting to close up again. Something's going on. I'll figure it out. Either way, it's part of the fun. Sure wish I'd written down. I had some new understandings with respect to whatever this stream's called. Now I can't even remember. Hang on, let me go to my channel here. New channel. Fulfillment and meaning are lacking. Yeah, a lot of it is this idea of some of it was probably listening to DBDR talk about dogs and pets, and he said he had a dog and he had to have it put down, and when he went to the place, the lady there talked him into being, and he said it was almost like she was enjoying. Probably she gets off on it, and you have to like it on some level, or at least not be opposed to it. And it's probably better for her if he's standing there watching. So I think she was motivated to talk him into it, and also so she can sell him stuff, like a mortuary trying to sell a casket or whatever. Have the dog cremated and it's $300, and upsells, right? Sell more services. Yeah, why wouldn't she be into that? I mean, who else is going to work there? And that's what they do all day. Put dogs down. But folks don't like it. I know a lot of people are dog lovers and pet lovers, but the dog is as dead as everything else here. And there's a certain sickness to the interactions between a human and a dog. There's a certain I can't quite think of the word for this, but pathology. There's a certain pathology there, and then it's a cope. And well, everything's a cope, sure, but and I've talked about before, when we come to NPCs, I can't get past the N and the P because that stands for no personality. And I really could tell during the pandemic, and the people that really love the mask, those are the people who they don't have a personality. What better way to symbol their lack of personality than to cover up the part of their physicality that has the greatest capacity to express, and then Benton's autistic ass, undiagnosed fake autistic ass, is quite expressive with his facial expressions, comical body language. But I've noticed years ago the dog as a proxy or a replacement or a stand-in stunt double for people's personalities. And, I noted in my youth, when I was socialized, there was no such thing as dogs in public. There was nobody walking a dog on a leash anywhere where I grew up. Now, maybe, and I didn't grow up actually like in the downtown. Maybe there was one or two people here and there, maybe, walking a dog. I doubt it. But now it's more or less normalized. Go walk the dog. Yeah, people on their own property, that's a different thing, That's a solo endeavor. Yeah, I used to like the drag race and I was into cars, but that doesn't then mean the car is alive. What I am is alive. It gives birth, expands, it animates the death of the fast car or whatever, or the hobby. The fulfillment and the meaning is inside. So it's the lack of meaning of the external. Oh man, we dropped off. Hope I haven't been gone too long. It's funny how I'm so likely to disconnect when I'm going into story time. Some shit. Not a good storyteller. Oh, we still have 2 people listening. Maybe I haven't been on too long. Maybe. I was talking about the team dog talk and the dog as replacement for a personality in NPC. I can't get past the N and the P in NPC because it stands for no personality. And the team drivers came to save the day. And, in this gentleman's attempts to bond with me, and I don't have the ability to bond. I can't bond with humans. I can't do it immediately. That doesn't mean I'm unable to form a bond with a human. Hell, I damn near fell into San Francisco Bay when me and ex-wife number 2, when I finally got her to come onto the west, to travel west with me and to leave Arkansas after I had spent a couple of years vagabonding. Actually, been several years by then. Yeah, we had bonded by then. Okay. Well, I've noticed that most humans form bonds with each other more or less immediately, and emotional bonds. And they're a lot of times temporary. Now maybe they're merely bonding with some. I don't know. Can't call that, but it's all dog talk. They got this pair of little dogs. Well, yeah, I can fake it. My, there's layers of the apology and flesh that just sort of performatively knows what to perform. Like, oh, there you go. And here's my clue that this is not a real, actual living being. Meaning, maybe he is possessed of Nancy Pelosi's MS-13 spark of divinity. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Maybe he is. Maybe what he is also what I am. But why can't he tell that I'm faking the funk? Or maybe he can, and he just doesn't care. Maybe the death warmed over, right? The blessing / curse aspects could just be, all he needs is for me to sort of go through the motions, right? To facilitate his own, because remember, he's going through a thing emotionally. It's probably kind of stressful because he has to assume I have some level of skill as a trucker. And if I failed, maybe I'm just exhausted, and maybe, best case scenario, if everything had fallen correctly, I would have hit the dock the first try. That's certainly possible. And I don't want to go through it. I don't want to belabor it, but, so the dogs probably are soothing and, sure, I get that. It doesn't mean they're alive, right? A fucking spinner toy is soothing. A damn stress squeezer ball is soothing. My hair's dead. My hair's long enough. Hair and be soothed. What are we talking about? Or somebody else might stroke it. And I wasn't bothered by it in the past. It definitely would trigger my autism, the dog talk. And I came up with the term dog talk because back when I was living in Alton Baker Park, pitching a tent down by the river, breaking camp every morning, because the sheriffs would go down there and sweep, and take your shit, partner, to try to leave your camp up permanently. there was a young couple in their 20s, meth users, of course. And this is all meth users. And again, I never, as much as I'm accused of arrogance and all of these things, so-called ego, I was neither here nor there. I was sort of the kind of the shot caller for this one area where a bunch of homeless people would sort of meet up and interact, called the pavilions, near a parking area where our car was parked. And I would sit there in the mornings, and if it wasn't too windy, I would roll my cigarettes because I was the cig man and had a micro business rolling cigarettes. And other people saw me, and after I left there, they tried to do the cigarette business, and nobody else could pull it off because they weren't disciplined enough. But that's okay. They tried, so good on them for trying. But Sig Man and Sig Man's old lady. Imagine being Sig Man's old lady. Hilarious. And so at times these 20-something male and female would be down there, and they were big-time dog lovers. Big-time dog lovers. In fact, there was some kind of pit bulls, of course, and pit bull mixes. And at one point, the woman got all tore up because there was a dog fight, and she physically broke up the dog fight and got all tore to shit. And don't ever tell me, I've known from day one women are tough as nails. Yeah, I never bought this women are weak bullshit. It's a bunch of nonsense. Now, not all of them are strong, but a strong woman's just as strong as a strong man in her own way. Actually, probably stronger. I mean, let's just be realistic. That's where I developed it always annoyed me. There was all this dog talk. I'm just not into dogs, man. It's never been my thing. When I was a child, we had a pair of Cocker Spaniels, and they got ran over and killed in our neighborhood. I don't know, 8 or 9, and I was over it. I was so, I won't even call it traumatic. It was just, it was what it was, and, I definitely dealt with it and moved on. It was, the morning happened, and, at that young of an age, there's not going to be a lot of repression involved. So, that was the purity of experience. But I was done. I was over it. I wasn't mad at dogs, but it was just I was over the idea of dog ownership for me personally. And then you get into, dog fighting, the deep south, it was fairly common for people to poison each other's dogs where I grew up. I mean, or at least talk of that. I don't know that it happened, but there was a lot of talk of that here and there. And to realize that most likely some of our neighbors ran the fucking dogs out over. Yeah, they're not supposed to be running loose, but they were, like many people's dogs, they got loose and were running around the neighborhood. And probably somebody ran them over on purpose. I mean, how'd they get both of them? Either way. I learned a so-called life at an early age through some of these experiences. And make no mistake, I'm from an actual dog fighting area of the country. It's not uncommon. Especially back then. Of course, these were Cocker Spaniels. And when I talk about shot caller, really all it was I had no power to do anything. It was, I would sort of, if the cops ever showed up, which was rare, I would typically be the one tasked with talking to the cops. And then, and probably some of this was I was pretty much the only person who was not a meth user, or in the case of ex-wife number two, a former user. Although she had a unique ability, a rare ability to recreationally use all sorts of drugs and not become addicted. But, these were certainly addicts. And then I would be probably, and half of this was just I was almost always there. We would, I had the resources to boil water in the morning and make coffee. We would make coffee for people. Sort of just a communal thing in the mornings. A lot of people would stop by. I'm pretty social. I can be anyway, as long as I have my time to myself. Of course, ex-wife number two, very charming, loved to play host. That's right up her alley. She's all into that. And, in the as a couple, it's really it's couple type activities. And mainly I would be viewed as like a mediator. Like if there was a dispute, I was pretty good at speaking to both sides individually and kind of just resolving it if possible. But while recognizing, well, I can't make anybody do anything, but if the other person agrees, then like, here's what we might be willing to work out. Negotiation, mediation, leadership. And then every once in a while, some nefarious folks would show up and try to ruin the environment, and then I would just run them off physically because I still had enough muscle on me and, the high testosterone. And yeah, I can't fight, but, unless they call my bluff, and maybe I can, I don't know, but unless somebody calls my bluff, I'm pretty good at bluffing my way through things. And then in their meth frenzy, they probably think I'm the cops anyway. So what's the difference? Yeah, it's interesting times. It's funny because I went back there years later, and it's funny because I was standing there at the pavilions, and some dude just, because it wasn't that uncommon for some mentally ill person, not on drugs, because remember, when they're on their drugs, they're fine. It's the lack of drugs that causes them to freak out. Somebody was freaking out, behaving inappropriately, and somebody else looked at me like, who knew my history there, and was like, is this gonna fly? And I'm just like, shrugged, like, I'm not in charge. I don't know what to tell you, man. It's like, what do you want me to do? I'm just visiting. But yeah, I agree. This guy's acting like a bozo. Endangering the public welfare, perhaps. It's like, I don't know what you want me to do. I've only been here for a day or two. I'm leaving. I'm out of here tomorrow or whatever, Apologies. The traffic is I'm having to pay strict attention to my driving for the moment. Safety third, as they say. But anyway, didn't really mean to get off into all those stories, but it's interesting. It'll be interesting. Apropos of something, but yes, the lack of. I think I diverted onto that through the lack of fulfillment, and that seems to be one of the major things that individuals are dealing with in the context of this realm and the spiritual war and man's so-called search for meaning. It's, again, the realm can't provide meaning. The realm provides many avenues to explore and go down these dead ends through, again, in the context of vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions, and to create, to craft a graven image to uphold before Moloch, to get, industrial and post-industrial society to say, okay, well, you've done a good enough job that, now you're going to be rewarded with enough dystopia bucks, enough Federal Reserve notes to maybe, own a home and have a retirement and all of this, perhaps. And, what is there meaning in that? I don't know. Is there fulfillment in that? Always seemed hollow to me. I never thought of mine to, work. And I knew I was going to work. I mean, the work is neither here nor there. Like, almost nobody lives a so-called full life and doesn't work for year after year after year after year, decades. I myself was employed and work. I'm working right now, for fuck's sake. What are we talking about? And then the gaslighting, if I fail to be employed, or just, hey, and like I told this guy that owns this company, I said, why can't I work 6 months and then take 6 months off? Like, why not? If I'm by myself and I know how to save money, or not save money, but I know how to be frugal, and I'm willing to sleep in my car, and if necessary, pick up cans and bottles, and maybe get some donations here and there. Like, why can't I work 6 months and take 6 months off? Like, how is it a free country and everybody gets to sort of find their own fulfillment, but that's wrong or not valid? Which is an acknowledgement that the being is expected to define themselves in relation to Moloch's machine. Period. End of story. It's blessing as curse, to curse one's own blessing by the subversion of the creative force into pretending to find meaning and fulfillment in a pair of pets. A married couple seeking to retire in a couple of years, already apparently, at least the guy, well into his 60s. And he seemed to have a Vietnam veteran hat on, but how could he be 60? I thought he said he was 60. Maybe I misheard him. He said, I'm in my 60s. He'd have to be like, maybe he was 70 and he meant he was like 60. He was doing a joke about still, like 69 and holding. I don't fucking know. Vietnam was over by 74, supposedly. I don't get it. Whatever. Maybe he served over there after the war. And maybe they're considered Vietnam vets. Non-combat. Or maybe he's just fucking nuts. Could be a crazy person. Let's not forget. There's a lot of crazy people who come across quite normal and well-adjusted. And, part of this is dogs are not interesting to a person, a pseudo-intellectual such as myself. Now, if I was into like dog training and high level, like all sorts of things about dogs, as like almost like a veterinarian, or how to train them and use them and do all of these things, that'd be different if I ran into another person who knew a lot about it. So it reminds me, I delivered a load in Maryland, and the guy who had retired from that company, and he just happened to be there that day, and he was helping out. Well, he was about to leave on a road trip for Arkansas, and somehow it got revealed that I was from Arkansas. And so we had an interesting conversation because it was just interesting topics. And so he kept bringing up interesting things that he was doing in his life and about to go do, like that weekend or whatever. It's like, yeah, I can pretend to be interested in the life of these dogs, or I can actually be engaged and interested in listening to this guy and just sort of throwing in my 2 cents here and there. Oh, that's interesting. Versus, let's stand here and watch some dogs run around while the guy tells me, oh, well, that's Charlie, and that's the one that everybody loves, and he's more social, and then that's the other one named whatever, and he keeps more to himself, and just on and on, and who cares, right? But then, it's acknowledgement of what is it about me, right? What is it within myself? What stagnated resentments, because I don't have a reaction. It's that, I can feel that just temporarily the neurodivergence kicked in and the slight annoyance by this is not meaning and fulfillment. So I think it's that the spirit of what I am, which can't become outraged, except, again, within the dead flesh, within the protracted experience of death. What I am will never know death, but so again, waking dream, surrealistic unreality, this pseudo experience, and then probably some of the stagnated, undealt with resentments of the past, then they seek to be cleared and healed, because in my experience, the being must go through and experience the actual emotions that were repressed in the past. But then the practitioner, myself in this case, through the expert level of breathing and through meditatively observing my own increasingly sensitive internal space, just in the moment, immediately is aware of that slight flash of anger and annoyance, and doesn't play into it. See? And just lets it pass by. And that is, again, the advanced course. High-level spiritual practitioner who has to be able to prove it by practicing it. Jack Talcott, if anybody knows who that is. So when Jack Talcott gets angry on stream and starts yelling at people, that's fine. It's not inappropriate. I've seen Jiddu Krishnamurti, who I have no doubt was a high-level spiritual practitioner, get angry and yell. The thing is, Jack Talcott doesn't really seem to be aware of it, and when it's brought to his attention, seems to blame other people. What do you mean, Jack? If you choose to get carried away with your own anger, what do you mean? You're allowing that. You're not a victim of that. You're victimizing yourself. So I recognize that, when I fall victim to certain things, I'm allowing that to make me annoyed. And even then, it was for one fleeting moment. Because as soon as I recognize it, I know I have the power to just don't engage with it, but also to not repress it. So first, I found it necessary to teach myself how to not repress. That took years just to learn how to, and to commit myself to not repressing, which means what? Now, neurodivergent, fake undiagnosed autistic Benton has to learn how to deal with his silly little feelings that he doesn't think are even important. I'm one of those fuck your feelings type motherfuckers. So now I got to learn how to deal with my stupid fuck, and I have, right? No fun, Certainly it wasn't any fun. No, it was not. And when people want to accuse me of thinking too much or analyzing too much or reading too much into a situation, I'm like, look, I've done all this work to increase my emotional intelligence. Other people could put some energies and focus and efforts into, I don't know, teaching themselves critical thinking, teaching themselves to be able to determine the difference between what they're thinking and what they're feeling. Most people are still stuck at a level where they can't distinguish between what they think and what they feel, like for real. They can't tell the difference. You know, I mean, come on, people. Anyways, blueberry time. Oh, yeah. Woo! Oh, yeah, good times. Thank you for your patience while I eat on the stream. Blueberries. Oh, yeah. All right, blueberries are down. Apricot's up next, but I'm going to wait a few minutes. rinse out the old mouth here, and we'll get back to yapping. It's not really yapping, but you know what I mean. Hope you do, anyway. All right. And Walmart's been having some decent watermelon, so I got some watermelon down here too. What a blessing. So, what does the being do about how they feel about the reality, in my opinion, that just about everything that this world puts forth as, representing meaning, which would then presumably lead to fulfillment, is simply invalid, like we talked about yesterday. Invalid, also the word invalid, right? A recognition of one who is lying in bed, convalescing perhaps, but then also perhaps on their deathbed. How does all of this work? And so, much like me faking the funk with the dog talk and the humoring these people who are, again, the dogs are a proxy and an interface to facilitate something that really is just not present in society anymore for the most part, as people have become just stranger and stranger, arguably, and social isolation. Just because the three of us were in the same space interacting, that doesn't make the isolation go away. And this couple is probably isolated. I'm sure they mentioned family and friends at some point. People, these people, they love to just, and it's all just ends up being sort of matter of factly, all the this and that's of their life, right? Their so-called life. And then it's well, why do you care? Well, I don't care. That's the whole point. So that's sort of the artificial, lack of meaning and fulfillment in even doing something like truck driving. Now it's my fault to some extent that I was interacting with these people, but there's been times when, I've had to swap loads with other drivers, and sometimes that's a team, and I might end up interacting with some people here and there, and how artificial that can be. And, we can talk trucking, but as I suspected, of course, the man started truck driving in the 80s. His dad was a truck driver and all this, and I can already feel the resentment rising up. And it's not even really resentment. It's that what I am can't be offended, but it's sort of, the dead flesh sort of being offended on behalf of the spirit of what I am, seemingly. It's these bullshit ideas around certain traditions, like with truck driving, and he's now, of course, he wants to kind of counsel me on backing, which fair enough. I mean, clearly it's, but again, there's nothing anybody can tell me that's going to help me. At this point, I've taken in none of these issues is lack of information, and I don't learn from people telling me things. I learn from other means than people saying stuff. Now, if I'm missing one sentence of information and somebody tells me the one sentence and I'm able to figure out what the fuck they mean, I can probably go ahead and put that into the brain and, okay, thank you. And in fact, I've learned a lot from asking people questions. But it'd be me asking specific questions. And then as they're giving me the answer, I'm putting it into my brain, versus when people just want to tell me stuff. I don't learn that way. That's not my learning style. I need to read most of the time, or see. I need to visually see it. Now we're trying to pass here. Hang on. Probably won't be able to. Got a car up our ass, but hang on. There's a problem with driving in the hills at night. You can't fucking see. I think we're about to go uphill, and I think we're going to pass this guy, but I can't really tell. So bear with me just a moment, if you would. Can't pass him on the flat. I think we're going to get him on the upgrade. Since I'm fairly balanced, we're both probably heavy, but since I'm fairly balanced between my my drive axles and my trailer axles, that makes it pull a little better. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get around him or not. And the gearing of the trucks plays a part, of course. Yeah, we got him. Got him! Almost. Yeah, there he is. Giving us the signal. Sorry, little four-wheeler. Oh, there's a couple of them. Now, where was I? Something about resentment. What was it bothering me? Or that could potentially bother me? Shit. I don't remember. It's another problem with doing these streams while I'm working. If I have to focus, then I have no choice. But yeah, something about I don't learn from listening. But people still want to tell me stuff. And then they don't even realize that it's not even about me. It's about whatever they're going through emotionally. And they have to tell me all of these things. So now the guy wants to sort of counsel me on back. And fair enough. I mean, I put myself in that position. But, now he's telling stories of his dad in the 80s, who was probably an owner-operator. And, it's just these bullshit, whimsical stories. And again, to me, it's the dead realm has a sense of humor, because he's like, well, basically, his dad taught him how to back up, more or less. They went to the truck stop, I guess when he was probably a fairly young teenager or something. And just listen to this. Like, this is just this is anathema to whatever whatever, again, the neurodivergence is, but he's basically like, his dad throws him the keys and says, put that truck, back into that spot, and, uh, basically then come in and eat, and I'm buying whatever. And, at the Greasy Spoon truck stop diner, I guess. And he's like, yeah, and I was hungry and wanted to eat. So, of course I was going to do it as fast as possible or whatever. But he's probably just really fucking good at backing. I mean, some people, I noticed this in CDL school. Some people are just really good at it from day one. That's just what it is. Some people like myself and this, one of the females in the class are just fucking terrible at it from day one. And don't seem to get much better. That's just what it is. But, so would I just gone hungry? I mean, probably, right? His pop's going to come out there well fed and be like, damn, boy, what is this? Guess you ain't eating. Like, what even is that, I don't get it. Whatever that is, man, I don't have the wiring to process that, which leads me to believe it's probably dead. Like, it's probably some performance, of death warmed over animated death. Like, is that supposed to represent meaning and substance? Some story that who knows if that even happened? Who even knows if that's the true memory? Maybe he's making that up. I don't fucking know. What am I supposed to do with that? Because I'm basically just, but yeah, the Machiavellianism and the dark triad and all of this. Yeah, I know how to make the appropriate facial expression, while I'm sitting there listening to this story. I mean, what the fuck? What am I supposed to do with that? And yeah, I tell stories too, but here's the thing, like when I talked to the guy at the receiver when I was delivering that load and he was going to Arkansas, he led the conversation and I just chipped in here and there. Like, I don't need to, it's not an emotional bonding. It's an actual interesting conversation. And I could tell that it was somewhat uplifting to both of us. We were probably both in a good mood or whatever, but, either way, versus this, I kind of felt almost like I'm being like vampirically drained between the dog talk and this whimsical stories of his father, the trucker or whatever. And how many people, when I mention truck driving, have to go through these stories of, oh, well, my whoever was a truck driver, and then now it's all about them and their feelings, which is fine. That's their feelings. Right. I can't engage with them at the level of their emotions. I mean, I'm not able to do that. Now, I have been able to form an emotional bond with people for relationship and their feelings. That's a very different thing. And then you get into the four agreements, or you get into like my willingness to meet their needs emotionally and my ability to meet their needs emotionally, and then their ability to reciprocate. I mean, that's really what we're talking about, versus a one-off, and I may never interact with these people again. Who knows? It's like, okay, that's great, but what am I supposed to do with that? And a lot of people probably think that when I mention something about just some factoid or whatever, and it's sort of an invitation to an intellectual discussion. And if they don't pick up the thread, then, I probably just don't have too much more to say. Because I know not to just talk their head off. I know not to talk at them. That's rude. I don't like when people do that to me. And see, I feel like a lot of this probably strikes a little too seem to really, this seems to be, often than not, people seem to operate on this basis. And I'm not even saying it's bad or wrong. It's kind of just a not being able to realize that even though I'm faking the funk to get through the interaction, and yeah, probably I shouldn't. It's debatable, but probably didn't feel like I was able to, since they're helping me out. But what's for helping me out? I don't know that it's, oh, let's go help Benton out. But yeah, I like to help out a fellow trucker when I'm able to. Sure. Now we're eating the apricots. Delicious and nutritious. And I think really, what could be bothersome is this idea of, hey, maybe Benton's right. Maybe there is no meaning and fulfillment in these stories and these, it's really a trope. TROPE. It's just sort of these well-worn stories in similar tropes. It becomes quite cliche. And I think the problem for me is, why don't these normie NPCs realize how cliche and just pedestrian and banal this is? Run of the mill. It's run of the mill. Now, what has happened to where so much of society now is seemingly attracted to listening to long-form lectures and discourses and discussions? Because as somebody who has done that most of my life, to some extent, in an academic sense, whether involved in a school or not, now it seems strange to me that, at least for a time, almost everybody got involved in listening to podcasts, lectures, and all of this other stuff. I find it quite bizarre, especially in a so-called truth community, where so many of the individuals, they don't creative, artistic type of people, Hell, I've talked about graffiti art and could tell that most of the audience just finds it abhorrent and repugnant. Just the idea of somebody vandalizing and making graffiti, right? Like, no, I'm talking about the artistic value. I'm not talking about the act itself. I mean, I probably agree with the law and order aspect. If I owned a building somewhere and had to spend a bunch of money because vandals kept defacing it, yeah, I probably wouldn't be too excited either. I get it. But once it's there, if it looks fucking cool, it looks fucking cool. Are we gonna deny that part of ourselves, the spirit of what I am, that viscerally responds to creative expression, And then, so in the past, when there was something of an audience and when the live streams were definitely more artistic, especially in a life as art sense, how much of the audience really wasn't into the artistic aspects anyway? And which is fine, but I'm confused by that, And that's probably the inverse of those forms. The more people who are into the whimsical kind of emotional sentimentality, that's probably the same people who are turned off by the artistic side of things. Overcharging my phone again. Almost time for a bathroom break. How long we been driving here? Almost, hour and a half. Have I said anything yet? I don't know. Maybe. Perhaps. And so what I would say is that meaning and fulfillment, this doesn't have to be the totality of meaning and fulfillment, but as far as, my assertion that that's only exists within the individual and never outside the individual, well, it seems to me like the individual creatively dealing with these various issues within themselves, well, that there's a potential for that to represent meaning and fulfillment, but never in a way where that's a bonding experience with other individuals. Now, I think that's the major mistake most people make, is they want to do all of that and feel comfortable, right? And, if you talk to some artists, I don't know how many of them will mention feeling comfortable, and I don't know how often will they mention their own need to feel comfortable. Whereas a lot of these endeavors, especially when you get into the spiritual side of things, a lot of it seems wrapped up in comfort seeking and support and groups, you know, mentoring, coaching, and all of these things. Versus, hey, how about you just get in there and figure it the fuck out, right? And that will be a creative, expressive process. That will be art, right? It's not possible. And this is where it gets back to, no spiritual surrender means no spiritual victory. The being cannot ever get to the advanced course level, expert level practitioner without art. There will be creative, expression within the being, whether that's noticed externally or not. Maybe other people will take notice, maybe they won't. And I don't think it is. Now, whether or not these are apocryphal stories, whether or not it really existed, this, I think Musashi or whatever, this great, supposed great swordsman, duelist of feudal Japan, most of what I've read are the quotes attributed to him. Of course, it's translated into English, and who knows if he ever actually said any of this. But it's mostly about him artistically living his life, life as art, in a way to prepare himself for battle. The warrior, the spiritual warrior as artist, but not framed in that way, but, more of like how to live. Basically, here's how a warrior is to live, more or less. And a lot of it is rooted in art and acceptance and receiving and getting out of one's own way, and all things that we would call feminine, because American society teaches that the only thing anything achievable is only achievable through assertive, aggressive, dominant means, the yang energy. It's like, well, what about all this yin? And so, to go into a truth community and to supposedly be seeking truth, and then also some notion of people coming together and maybe, raising their level of consciousness and all of this, how's that going to occur? And the being's not going to teach themselves how to work with the yin energies, and is not ever going to teach themselves how to get out of their own way. It doesn't make sense to me. It's not logical. So when I got to the point in my own growth or attainment, or whatever you want to call it, at a certain point, it was like, well, looks like I'm pretty much maxed out on the yang. I don't really want to master the yin, but that's where the growth is. And, I had a goal, so who cared that I didn't want to do something? That wasn't the point. I was already committed to the path, so my preference was just, okay, that's a preference. Yeah, I don't want to do that. And then, especially at the level of peer pressure and the level of people needing to be supported, or at least wanting to tell other people what they're doing, which can be a grave error, certainly can be, or at least not helpful, is to sort of want to be accepted on the basis of they're working towards a certain goal. Well, if a person gets far enough along in the process where it's time to start working with the yin, this society's probably just going to ridicule them on that basis, most likely. I don't know how they're going to be accepted. Now I'm trying to find somewhere to pull over. So there's not anywhere. Somebody's talking about truck driving. I think it averages out to like total on duty time of it's like 8 points, just 70 divided by 8. I think it's like 8.75 hours a day for truck driving. to never have to restart, to average out. I'm just gonna have to pull over on the shoulder. It sucks because there's really no good spot, but I gotta go. There was an exit back there, but I missed it. Yeah, this is not a good spot, but none of them are, so. Although, wait, is that an exit? What is that up there? No, it's not. But let me at least get to where the road straightens out a little bit. Maybe they'll see me. You know, we forget truck driving. They have us doing all this other bullshit. You know, my actual job is more or less beside the point most of the time. I mean, it really is. The fact that, you know, in spite of the lack of backing at times, my skill level is pretty fucking high, especially for my level of experience. You know, and doing all of this safely. Arrgh. Oh, fuck. Why are we running the heater in the goddamn sleeper again? I don't get, why do I do this? This is like 3 days in a row of going in the sleeper and it's just on the oven. What the fuck? Anyway, my apologies for taking it out on the audience. Fuck. Anyway, I'm not going to allow that to carry me away with anger, but Calgon, take me away, man. Goodness. Yeah, I can tell I've definitely stirred up some resentments and some repressed anger. Although historically, that's been the one emotion I was pretty good at expressing and not repressing, but there must be a little bit of it. It's just like, why, buddy? Why are you doing this to yourself? And really, I blame the technology more than anything else. It's a fucking oven back here, which I don't really care, except that I've got supplements. It's not good for my supplements to do this to them. I thought I had the flashers on. It was my turn signal. Now, I would argue that the flashers and the turn signals should probably have different noises. Because, like, the angle of my steering wheel, I couldn't see that it wasn't both flashers. It was just the one. And in the daytime, sometimes you just can't, the dash, you just can't see it. I would argue that it should have different noises. It shouldn't be the same noise for both. But whatever. Whatever. Here would have been a better spot, but somebody else already found it anyway. So. Oh, he broke down, actually. Or maybe, yeah, who knows. I don't know. Whatever. Whatever. And, you know, I do enjoy the gaslighting of people who might hear this, and not the people who actually listen, but just hypothetically. And it's like, well, that doesn't sound like any way to live, and, you know, misery and all of this. And to me, the relevance is not misery or a lack of enjoyment. It's they are not facing the fact that everybody experiences misery on a regular basis. Virtually everybody or the people that don't are on some completely different trip that's, you know, probably tied up in serving evil, and that can't ever be fulfillment. You know, not in my world. That's not possible. That's a violation. You know, if the being is so irredeemable that they actually are experiencing fulfillment by serving evil, well, that's not what I'm talking about. You know, so of course, beings who are endeavoring, you know, to especially level up their own abilities in spiritual warfare. I mean, to me, that's what it's all about. If it's a spiritual war between the forces of good and the forces of evil, well, then I'm a spiritual warrior, or Benton performing as spiritual warrior on some level. Let's say the words correctly, sir. Spiritual. And why wouldn't I want to do that at the highest level possible? And I would argue the spirit of what I am would be drawn to that. So the misery is beside the point. You know, I know how to enjoy my day, and I can have an enjoyable day where, you know, I know that I've got some cranky old man energy in the morning. I can still enjoy the day. And they say, well, that sounds like a cope. And I say, well, I would argue that if we pull back our view far enough from an extrapolated enough view, everything's a cope. Everything is a cope with respect to the so-called human experience. What's not a cope? So it's like, okay, great. That sounds like a cope. Does it? Why do other things not sound like the copes that they are? That to me is way more relevant than something, quote, being that it's plausible to accuse, you know, Benton of that sounds like a cope. Okay, great. To even say that to me is sort of a person tipping their hand and saying that they're involved in living a so-called life. Their own protracted experience of death is tied up in, you know, crafting a graven image to uphold before Moloch to get what seems to be the acceptance of other people here, but it's not actually acceptance because it's based on what this world knows of acceptance, which is absolutely fucking nothing except it. This world knows the lack of acceptance. And that's how it pretends to provide acceptance through, again, death warmed over, animated death, subversion of the creative force of what I am. See, once the being understands how the forms operate energetically and philosophically, the ins and the outs, you know, it's very, very difficult for the gaslighting to actually take hold, because that is gaslighting. Whether or not those individuals understand that that's a gaslighting attempt, it still functions as gaslighting. It's basically to if Benton is on in this particular vein and it doesn't make sense to society, it's society reacting and saying, well, sir, that's crazy what you're acting like. And I'm just like, well, no, actually, society is de facto insane, and because so many individuals are performing the same insanity at a consensus level, that doesn't validate it and make it sane. That's illogical. That's crazy, right? But they can't ever be convinced of that by me, because they have to uncover it and discover it for themselves, right? So, did I leave where is the watermelon? Did I get the watermelon ready and then leave it somewhere else? Where is the watermelon?
Oh, there it is. Okay, good.
I have a bad habit of getting things ready and then leaving them to where I can't reach them. Ah, angry Ben. Not really, but there's some anger seeking an outlet in there somewhere. That's some pretty good watermelon, I must say. Woohoo! Oh yeah. Now where are the paper towels? And we'll really be doing good. Those may have eluded it. Yep. They probably rolled away. Oh well. Oh well. Thank you for your patience. Be right back with you. We're almost through the watermelon here. Yeah, I don't have any idea where the paper towels went. They ain't up here. I got a handful of watermelon juice. I have to start stashing some where I can reach them for a backup or something. To protect myself from myself here. Oh, I found them. All right. I knew they had to be around here somewhere. All right. All right. Woohoo! Oh, man. Yeah. Yeah, buddy. Oh, yeah. Bulk hungry. I see you down there. I figured that was you talking about trucking. Well, I don't know if you still drive a truck or not, but this shit is fucked, man. It's beyond fucked. They're unfucking it a little bit, but, you know, not in the, it's not going to be to the driver's benefit, but we all know that. Man. Apparently, the industry is talking about getting rid of these lease programs where these companies are able to provide brand new trucks, and the lease, the lessor, it's like $1,500 a week or whatever, and then most of the time they never even own the truck, and at the end of the thing anyway, and depending on what the rates are like, they may not even really be making any money. And a lot of them are newer drivers and get sort of talked into doing it. It's definitely more to the company's benefit. But then here I am working on a 1099, driving a truck with had 11,000 miles on it when I got it. Uh-oh, we disconnected. Uh-oh. Your data is an error. you, buddy? Of course, I'm just wondering when's my next trip to Walmart. But damn, dude, it's getting expensive since I'm paying now. I'm not complaining, you know. Happy to be able to do it, but yo, shit is real, man. Apparently, the government's cracking down on food stamp fraud, which of course I'm in favor of them cracking down. There's a channel I follow that covers a lot of that news. A lot of scams, man. It's definitely scam nation. Trucking, a lot of scams in trucking. Like these lease purchase deals I'm talking about. Function as a scam. Tell you what, we need to educate people on how to pass. It is not necessary to slow down and pass me at my speed. Just, it's completely fine to just pass me at whatever speed you're already going. Imagine slowing down to pass somebody. The insanity of that. And then, of course, I understand the fear. Oh my God, we're going to get a ticket. It's like, no, you're not going to get a ticket. Or if you are, it's not going to be for this. Man. Trying to think of what I need now that I'm cut my egg yolk intake in half, at least temporarily. Probably don't need to go quite as frequently. The water, though, I bought them out of Mountain Valley spring water the last couple of times. At least they have these 6-packs, 500 milliliter bottles, pretty close to 1 pint, 17 ounces, I guess, 16.9 ounces. They sell a bottle that's like 827 milliliters, slightly higher, per ounce cost, but bought a couple of those, and it was still, I think I spent $150 total. That was probably 40 of that on water that's might last 3 days, 3 to 4 days. Well, definitely won't last 4 full days. And I'm still using the cheaper water for other stuff, rinsing out my mouth or tea and the egg drinks. Peppermint and dandelion tea at night or in the afternoon. I had trouble. I didn't have trouble going to sleep. I think I'm not used to having more energy from eating less food. I was all jacked up. It took me a while to go to sleep. Too stimulated, probably. Oh, man. Well, I guess I'm going to get out of here. The old battery's getting low. Thanks for watching. Bye.